Everyone to another performance clinic. Today's topic, automated SRE-driven performance engineering with Dynatrace. My name is Andy Grabner. Yeah, thanks for being here. Today is a topic that is dear to my heart, performance engineering. I've been doing performance engineering pretty much most of my 20+ year career now. And very happy that I can talk to you and show you stuff that I've been writing about last week. I posted the blog on the Dynatrace blog with the same title. And today I really want to take the chance to walk you through it and how this can actually really be done, all the stuff that I've shown on the blog. Again, a reminder, if you watch this later on, then you can always reach out to me. You see my Twitter handle, my name. Reach out to the Dynatrace community on our discussion forum, answers.dynatrace.com, or reach out to your Dynatrace local contacts. I'm sure they can help you in case questions come up. Also, in case you haven't yet explored Dynatrace, check out the Dynatrace SaaS trial where the link is here. So you can do all of this yourself, even though you don't have Dynatrace yet. Just give it a try, sign up for the trial and do it. And last thing, also listen to our Pure Performance podcast. Brian Wilson, one of my colleagues, and I, we run that podcast. We've been doing it for a couple of years now. And it would be, really great to get some more new listeners and also let us know what you want to hear. For those people that are live, I encourage you to ask questions through the Q&A feature, the question feature in GoToWebinar. I will walk through them at the end, and we'll let you hopefully answer all of the questions. Right? All right, so let's get started. Today, what we really want to do, what I want to do is, I want to show you based on the blog post that I wrote, and you can see the link to the blog post on the bottom. Just go to the Dynatrace blog, Guide to Automated SRE-Driven Performance Engineering. And I wrote this blog as a tutorial to show you how you can use Dynatrace for performance engineering, how to automate a lot of things around performance engineering so we can automate also the analysis. Now, what that really means, what I want to show you at the end of the day or at the end of the session, we want to build a dashboard that will include both host and infrastructure metrics, or SLIs, service level indicators. So I started adopting the terminology that Google has been promoting around the site reliability engineering practice. Now, why I know SLIs, right? SLIs in the end are, different types of metrics from the stack. So here on the dashboard that I'm going to show you later, I have host and infrastructure metrics. Then we have service and process level metrics, things like garbage collection, CPU consumption, and things like that. Then, however, as performance engineers, we obviously, when we run our tests, then we want to know a little bit more about the actual test execution. So I have one of the things that I like is a metric that breaks out the requests by HTTP response time, response type. HTTP 200, 300, 400, 500 gives us a clear indication, an easy overview if something is wrong. Then I want to get some SLIs, so some metrics around throughput, load distribution, and response time. But what's very important here is I want to have it overall for my whole test. So I see how is my system coping with throughput, but then I also want to get it split up per test step. Because if you run tests against the environment, I'm pretty sure you have tests that execute different steps along the way, are testing different APIs, different business processes. So you want to split this out. And then also give you a couple of additional thoughts on what you can actually do with Dynatrace beyond the classical metrics like response time, throughput, and failure rate. Things like what is the most CPU consuming business function that you're testing? What are the ones that are making most database calls or most service calls? So a lot of these architectural metrics that I really like. All right, so the thing is, if we have prepared this, and this is kind of what I want to show you today, then this kind of paves the way to what I'm going to show you in my next performance clinic in 2 weeks, where I'm going to take the stuff we're building today, and then while it's beautiful to look at these dashboards, but instead of having these dashboards that allow us to quicker analyze things, I want to automate that as well. So instead of then looking at these dashboards, maybe from build to build, I really want an automation around it that does this validation and looking at metrics and comparing them with previous builds fully automatically. And this is also where next, in 2 weeks, I will focus on how Captain can also be used, our open source project, to automate test execution, but also test analysis. And I will show it to you in a way where I integrate it also with Jenkins. So this is something where I use Jenkins as a pipeline tool to kick the whole process off, kept on orchestrating everything. But really the goal today is getting started with, if you don't use Captain, if you just want to get started with performance engineering, but bring it to the next level, this is what I want to show you today. All right, so what I have prepared for you, I've stood up my test environment. Again, very simple today, but I have some EC2 machines. I've installed the Dynatrace 1 agent. So I have host level monitoring, obviously. Then I will run a process. So I have my sample app that I've been using over the last couple of months. I will just run it as a Docker container. So on my Linux machine that I have Docker. So I just do a Docker run. That means I will automatically have Dynatrace seeing into that container, process level monitoring. I also get service level monitoring. So this is actually the way my sample app looks like. And I have it in different build variations, but this is the app. And so it's going to be automatically monitored. What I've also prepared is, in my case, a JMeter test script. Now, remember, everything I do today can be done with any testing tool that allows you to obviously, execute load against your system, but it also allows you to add context to your tests. Like in my case, I have 4 particular test steps: homepage, version, echo, and invoke. These are 4 features of my app that I'm testing. And I'm going to show you how to integrate this better all together. As I said, I'm using JMeter today, but it works with any other tool. Actually, our friends at Neotist did a great job with the Neoload product. They've automated a lot of these things, but you can also do this with LoadRunner, with Gatling, and all the other tools. So this is what I've prepared. So it actually brings me to my first demo. And I see the first questions already coming. Yes, you can build all these dashboards without Captain. What I'm going to show you today is all just pure Dynatrace, okay? Everything is pure Dynatrace. And in my next performance clinic, I show you how Captain on top automates even more. And is there a way to share these types of dashboards? There are templates. I'm also going to show you a GitHub repo where I keep the templates of these dashboards and also the templates of all the configurations. So thanks, Daniel and Mike, for the first questions. I just happened to see them. That's why I answered them now. Otherwise, in case I don't see the questions right away, I will answer them at a later time at the end in the Q&A session. Okay, first one, show instrumented environment. So let me go over. I've got so many things open. All right. So first thing I have is, Dynatrace, right? I have my Linux machine here. In my case, it runs on EC2. So I just deployed a 1 agent. That's all I did. I also have the AWS integration turned on so that I automatically also get all the AWS tags and metadata. Now, let me actually go to my machine. So this is my Linux box. Nothing is running on it right now, right? If you can see here, if I look at the last 30 minutes, there's really nothing running except the Amazon agent. But now what I want to do, I want to start build number 1. So here what I'm doing a Docker run. I'm using my Grabner Andy simple node service. And what I'm also doing, and I think this is also very important, and this is something you need to understand, whenever you deploy an app, I encourage you to feed it with enough metadata. Now, Dynatrace already has a lot of metadata from the app itself. In general, right? There's a lot of metadata. We know the technology type, where it runs, what class has been loaded, what Docker container it is, if you run it on Kubernetes, in which namespace it runs. So Dynatrace can already extract this data. What I'm going to show you here is an option to add additional context in form of an environment variable called DT tags, and I call it app under test. So if I run this now, my containers start running. So that's great. My app is up and running, and I should have, here we go. Let's see. If I refresh it here, well, perfect. So this is, as I said, I'm not that proud of my app, but it does a good job. It's a Node.js app. I just launched it. And thanks to me having the Dynatrace 1 agent installed on that EC2 machine, it's automatically monitored. Nothing else I need to do. It's fully monitored. And to show you what this really means, that means I have my host here. If I go over to transactions and services, right, then in a second, actually, let me execute a little bit of load against it. I have a script here. Let me just do a quick run here to execute a little bit of load. It should hopefully do it. As I said, I'm just using this tool here, but you can use any type of load testing tool that you have. And if everything works according to plan, then we should in a second see my service showing up here. All right, let's go back to the host, Grabner Andy, all processes. So the app is still running. Let me double check this. Yeah, all right. See. There you go, it's coming in and it's always the great thing of live demos. Here we go. Now it's coming in. It's my simple Node.js service. So these are some other services I'm running the same app multiple times on different Kubernetes clusters, but this is now my simple Node.js service. This is the one I just started. Awesome, that's here. You can also see here environment app under test, so it's automatically tagged because I have added this environment variable to it. Now, why is this interesting? Why do I want to use tags? Because later on, if we're building dashboards, if we want to automate things around that particular app, we can query Dynatrace and use these metadata, these tags as filters. So for instance, I can say, I only want to see services where the environment variable app under test was put on that process. So now I have it here, right? That's very easy. Now, if you have a larger, obviously, test environment where you are deploying multiple containers, multiple applications, app servers, web servers, I just encourage you to find something there of metadata that you can then kind of convert into tags. So it's easy for you to find that this is my app that I'm actually testing. All right, so this is the first thing. Second thing, let me quickly stop my test here. Or stop it. My test actually finished. That's good. So that was the first thing I wanted to show you. I showed you the instrumented environment. So I've installed the one agent. I didn't show this to you live, but I've just rolled out the one agent in the beginning. I launched my app, and that's it. The second step now is request tagging and request attributes. Now, why is this important? I have my test script that I've prepared here with my four, let's say test steps: homepage, version, echo, and invoke. And what I really want, I don't just want to get insights into what's the overall response time or per URL. I really want to tell Dynatrace, hey, this particular request comes in from this testing tool, and it is coming in from this test step, and it's like homepage, version, echo, invoke. So I'm using the same names as I have in my testing tool. And then on the Dynatrace side, I want to have the same data. I want to have the same names. I want to have the same terminology. And I also want to have metrics for it. Now, the first step for this to work is we need to connect the two dots with each other. And the way this works is, again, this is now generic to any HTTP-driven testing tool, but I'm showing it to you in JMeter. But essentially what happens, whatever testing tool you have, we give you the option to add or let the testing tool add an additional HTTP header, like in our case, x-dynatrace-test with a couple of name value pairs. TSN equals homepage, that's a test step name. LTN, load test name, let's say test May 18. LSN, load.jmx. And then VU will be the virtual user. And actually the list here, this is just the best practice, so you can define what you want, but we still encourage you to follow our best practice so that the more people are using our best practice, the easier it is also if you switch between environments. If you are looking at different installations of Dynatrace, then it all becomes more familiar. So in my case, I'm extending my JMeter script for every request it executes to add context to the request. So that's the first part of it, right? But then we also need to tell Dynatrace, well, now you need to Dynatrace, TSN is my test step name, LTN is my load test name, LSN is my load script name, VU is my virtual user. And for this, we have to define what we call in Dynatrace request attributes. So a request attribute is a generic capability in Dynatrace to, when we do distributed tracing, when we are capturing our pure paths, and we capture HTTP parameters, URLs, and all that stuff, anything along the path, we can tell then Dynatrace, please extract this little piece of information like this header, and from this header, take this value and extract a piece of information and then add it as metadata on the request. So later on, I can say, I want to see all the requests that came in from a testing tool that specified the X Dynatrace test header, and I want to only look at those where the TSN value was homepage. So the way we do this, there is, as I said, an option in Dynatrace under settings where we can define request attributes. You would do it for all of your different values, for TSN, for LTN, LS, and VU, and whatever else you have. Then for the data source, you can specify multiple data sources, but in our case, we would specify a data source, meaning from which particular processes and technologies do we want Dynatrace to watch out for this particular piece of information. Here, it's very important, especially in a very large environment, to specify filters. So I'm sure you have your test environment where you run your tests, and maybe you have your production environment. So here you want to already tell Dynatrace, I'm only interested in this information in a testing environment. So you can use our filter options here. But very important, we want to capture this information from the HTTP request header. It's the X-Dynatrace test. And now this, you can also do it with regular expressions, but I just do it very simple. I say extract the data. So look at this HTTP header and then look at the value between TSN equals and the following semicolon. All right, now I want to do two things now. First, I just want to show you how you can do this manually, but I'm a big fan of automation because all this configuration can be fully automated. And you can see here the link on the Captain repo on GitHub. There's an example that I built, and this example script, the create test request attributes, you can just use it again, even without Captain. It's just part of the Captain examples, but this will just create the configuration in Dynatrace. All right, so let's do this quickly. I'll show you. Let's go over to settings. I'm gonna quickly show you where this is in the UI. And then under server-side monitoring, under request attributes, you can see here I have nothing defined right now. I cleared everything up earlier in the beginning. And then I would do something like test step name TSN. Right, this is the attribute, and then I would say I want to capture it. And again, here, this is where if you have certain technologies, certain process groups, you would specify only do this in my test environment if you have some type of metadata that defines this. Now, what do we want to capture? It's an HTTP request header captured on a server side. It's X Dynatrace test. And then what we can also do is this is where we can, by default, this would extract the whole value, but we only want to get something between TSN equals and the semicolon, right? And that's it. And as you can see, there's a lot of cool things you can do here. I just do it the easy way. And now I have my TSN and I click on save. Now, this was the manual way of doing it. Remember, manual is good, but automation is better. So what I have here is, this is the GitHub repo I mentioned earlier. It's on the examples GitHub, and there's one script under examples, simple node, Dynatrace. It's called create test request attributes. Right, that's the script here. And if I call this one create test request attributes, it will tell me, hey, it's going to create LTN, LSN, and LTN. I already specified my Dynatrace tenant and also my API token earlier on as an environment variable, DT tenant and DT API token, right? But as you can see here, I'm just making REST calls. So very easy. Click on it, boom, do. There you go. It's creating everything. And it should then, if I refresh here, let's double check. There we go. Now I have LSN, LTN, and TSN. So there's no need to do this manually, but I wanted to at least show you how you can do it manually. Now, what does this give us? What this gives us, if I look at my testing script, right? Remember, I have my test script. I have my homepage, my version, my echo, and invoke. And these are just testing my individual URLs of my sample app. But the way I've done it with JMeter I've built a bean shell preprocessor, and in your tool, this might be different. There might already be a checkbox, like in Neoload, there's a checkbox where you can say send Dynatrace HTTP header. In this case, I am just constructing the x-Dynatrace header, and I'm adding LT. I'm doing LSN equals TSN equals LTN. So I'm using context data like the name of the test step here. I also have the ability to specify LTN, the load test name. Call it test June 3rd. Actually, let me call this test June 3rd 1, right? So this should be the first test that I'm running today. And let me double check if this is the right URL. I believe it is, but always double check. There we go. We just put this in here. Check. There we go. And please do me the favor, for those that are live, don't make my life harder by running a full load test against this URL now. I know some of you want, but don't do it, because this is a small Linux machine where this stuff runs, and otherwise it may be too much under stress. So now my load test is running. So now what do we actually get of this now? Remember, the reason why we do this is because my test is adding context with every request. So on the Dynatrace side, we can do a couple of things with it. So the first thing I want to show you is in slides what we can do. And it is multidimensional analysis of tests. This is the cool thing. Now, with that metadata, Dynatrace is not only able to show us the end-to-end traces and gives us analytics option on top of URLs and failure rate based on URL or services, but we can now run multidimensional analysis based on test context. And I'm going to introduce you, in case you haven't seen it, to the multidimensional analysis view in Dynatrace, which is really awesome. And I want to say thanks for the team in Dynatrace that built this amazing capability in the recent couple of releases. So this is really cool. So what we can do is you can basically say, I want to get a particular metric, let's say response time for a particular aggregation. And instead of looking at this response time, let's say by URL, I want to split it by some context that I have, like in our case, the test step name, because now we have this piece of metadata also available. Additionally, we can filter, and I can say only show me those data points, or also only include data that actually really has the TSN attribute on it. Why is this important? If you have a shared testing environment where you run your load tests and somebody else runs some other tests, then, or maybe some manual tests where this is not on, that the tag is not on, you only want to make sure you're analyzing data that came in from your test, okay? And then we have some really cool things. We get the split out, and we can have an interactive chart, and then we can do some focused analysis. And you can also save this view, which is also pretty cool. And then from here, we can also do diagnostic steps, like show me the hotspots, show me what's wrong. So I think that's part of the next demo. I see some questions are coming in. Yes, the scripts that I've used are all in the GitHub repo. That's all good. I'll share the details with you in a second. Also, it's also in the slides. It's all there. Actually, I can show you quickly, maybe GitHub Captain examples. Again, it's part of the Captain examples, but all I'm showing you today is just for Dynatrace purposes. If you go to Captain examples, simple node, and then under Dynatrace, this is where all of these scripts, you can find all these scripts. All right, good. So now what I want to show you is the next step, right? We said we want to go to diagnostic tools, and we want to create a new analysis view. And I want to see now, let's say the response time. Response time. And instead of having the default split by request name, which would be, typically the URL, I want to go in here and I want to say request attribute. LSN is the step name, LTN, test step name, TSN. I want to have it split by TSN, by test step name, right? And what that does, all of a sudden, as you can see here, it is splitting it. But let me just do this quickly. I also want to filter it by request attribute TSN, and what I have In here, I accidentally have a filter on a management zone. So I removed the filter. Let's go to the last 30 minutes. So now what I have is I show me the response time, split by test step name, and only focus on those pure paths where actually we have a test step name on the request, which filters out all the other stuff that came in through other tools, through background noise or whatever. So now, as you can see here, we have the interactive chart. So I see what's the response time and throughput. Also, we always see throughput as well, and then split by our test step name, invoke, version, echo, and homepage. So that's pretty cool. And now from here, we can do our analysis. So I can say, I want to see my response time hotspots, which means now Dynatrace is crunching through all the pure paths, all the transactional data we have, but it's automatically saying, I'm interested in the time frame that I've listed earlier, and I'm only interested in those that came in from TSN invoke. And then here I can do my classical diagnostics. It seems it's code execution. Well, then bring me to the method hotspots. If it is, right? And then you can do your classical diagnostic use case, figuring out where is time spent. If you're interested more in pure diagnostic use cases and what you can do, I already have another performance clinic where I walk you through the whole thing, right? So that's cool. All right, so remember how we got started? Diagnostic tools. Let's do this again. Create analysis view. And then you can select the metric. And there's a lot of metrics here, right? You can do failure rate, fetch count, HTTP. If you, for instance, are just interested in the 400, 500, IO time, number of database calls. Right? One of my favorites. Number of database calls split by URL, or number of calls to other services. This would be calls to backend microservices, and then not split by URL, but maybe split by, again, by the test step name. Request test step name, and here we go, right? And then we do another filter because I really like it to say only where we also have a test step. And then here we are. And then we see that which particular, it seems only my invoke is making backend service calls, and on average it's one call. So that's pretty sweet. Okay, so this is the thing. You can also save that view. Actually, let me save another view because we need this for my next exercise. I'm doing failure rate. I want to see failure rate, and let's save this view. And I call this load test failure rate view, and save. There we go. Perfect. Good. We can see here right now failure rate is 0. That's great. Again, thanks for all these questions. I will probably get through most of them later on in the public Q&A. So we analyzed our first test. So what basically means we have executed a test where the data, the tool and Dynatrace was connected for the request attributes. And now we can do specific diagnostics on a particular test, right? So step number 3, comparing two tests. How can I compare two tests? Well, first of all, let me switch my sample app from build number 1 to what I've prepared, build number 2 with a fancy orange background color, and build number 2 also has slightly different behavior. It should have a couple of errors in. So this is the first thing we want to do. I'm switching to build number 2. And the second thing is, once we run the test, I will then show you how we can use the multidimensional analysis view. And then if we see there in one particular build, we had a problem with, let's say, high failure rate compared to a previous build, we can then do a performance comparison and then select 2 time ranges and then actually say, show me what the real difference is. All right, so let's run another demo. That means the first thing I need to do is I am stopping my app here. This is build number 1. Now I'm running build number 2. Okay, Docker run, build number 2. It's awesome. And then let me do this. Let me double check first. Yeah, build number 2, indeed, it's orange background color. It says build number 2. And now I'm running, oh, this test is still running. So let me stop this test. It did about 40,000 samples. So let's kick this test off. And let's give it a little time. but we should immediately see that the error rate goes up. Actually, let me stop this again because I forgot something. What I wanted to do is I want to change this LTN. Remember, this is a value that I'm also passing in as context. This will actually later on allow us to distinguish also the individual tests in Dynatrace very easily. Now let me clean my data here, and then let's run another test. There we go. So now we immediately see we now have a failure rate of 50% of the invoke function. So this is the problem I built into my app. Build number 2 has a 50% failure rate every time when I simulate the click on the invoke here. All right, so what can we do? Let me go back into Dynatrace. And the first thing I want to show you is if we go to, let's say, yeah, 30 minutes time frame should be good enough, obviously. I want to show you, as I still need about 2 or 3 minutes until the data comes in from the new test or until we have enough data. What's really nice, I can also say request attributes. Let's say load testing name, and I can say, what did I call it? I called it this here, right? So hopefully if the demo gods are with me, here we go. Now I'm only focusing on the new data that just comes in, right? So I can actually see of, again, filter. These are all filters on live data that comes in, and then the multi-dimensional analysis view gives me all of this. I can also say where load test name, that is 1. That should then probably be the previous test, right? That's great. If I want to see everything, right, here we go. What's also nice now, I ran the tests so close to each other, so there's obviously not a whole lot of gap, but I immediately see that the failure rate, right, went from 0%, now it's at 50%. Dynatrace also sees this, and it's all only on TSN. I mean, only on the invoke. So let's give it maybe another second or so. But then what we can do, once we have enough data, this is also a cool feature in case you haven't seen it. Some of our charts now, you can do the time frame selector in the chart, which will then automatically update the time of your global time select on the top. So this is also really cool. All right. All right. So let's do this one here. Let's go back to 30 minutes. And as I'm waiting for a little more data to come in, let me see what other questions. Can we build these dashboards without Captain? Mike, I think I mentioned this. All the dashboards I'm going to build, this has nothing to do with Captain. Captain is just the next step, what I want to show in 2 weeks from now. Is there a way to share these dashboards? Yes. So again, the dashboard that I want to show you in later on how to build it and kind of behind the scenes is this dashboard here. Let me zoom out a little bit. Right, as data is coming in. This is right now empty because we haven't created the metrics yet. But these dashboards in Dynatrace, right? You can share them, you can export them, you can use it through the REST API, and you can also create them. And also, if you go to my GitHub repo, there is actually a script called create load testing dashboard, and it will create the dashboard based on an export that I did. And by the way, all of this, what I'm showing you today, is stuff I have also covered in my recent blog post, right? So if you want to, kind of walk through this on a slower pace and you want to read up on it, it's called Tutorial Guide to Automated SRE-driven Performance Engineering. Good. So what I wanted to show is comparing tests. So let me go back to my diagnostic tools. Right. Let me open up my saved view from earlier. That's also great. So the views are now here. You can also save views to the individual services. So on individual services, you can have different views, and then that makes it just so much easier. All right. So now what I want to do is, and I should hopefully have a little more data, but let me, if we focus on this here, This is kind of my second test that just came in. I see that the average failure rate is 42.5%. So this is obviously something I want to investigate. And then I can click on performance comparison. And then the comparison mode comes up. And it should, select the time range I had here. And then I want to compare it with the previous time frame here. So I scroll over. And it's actually custom time frame today. And I want to do let's do this the last 30 minutes. This is something where actually the team is going to build in some new capabilities of selecting also. I mean, so as we send loads to Dynatrace, we can also mark start and stop timeframes of tests. This is something I'm not showing you today, but the idea is that the timeframe selection here will be easier. You can actually say test number 1, test number 2. And I know we've been, probably talked to some of you already, we've been promising this for a while, but I assure you this is going to come. So what I want to show you, and now I know what's wrong. It's yesterday. This was my mistake. It is, I want to compare it with, today's the 3rd. That's it, right? I want to go in and here, I want to zoom to that time frame. Let me go in and select the last 10 minutes. It was 27 to 20 something, and then here I think it was like 10 past or something like that. Hopefully I find a representative time frame. The tests were just too close to each other. Okay, all right. And then yeah, I kind of have a little overlap, but I think you get the idea. If you select the right time frame from your tests, then you can do different comparisons. You can either compare on response time, but you can also, in this case, I wanted to analyze my my errors. So I can see obviously there were more errors here than in my previous test. So I can show the details. Now I'm focusing only on one particular endpoint. Why? Because remember, I started the whole diagnostics by just saying I'm only interested in one particular test step name. If I take this off, the whole time frame will be analyzed and compared. In this case, just this endpoint, compare details of failure. I obviously see in the graph there is a problem. What I see though is as a clear indicator, these are all HTTP 500 errors that I've put into my app. And from here, I can also, if I want to go down to the pure paths, so I know a lot of you people, including me, right? We love to have the pure paths underneath, so I can still go to the pure paths. And I mean, they are failed anyway, all of them with an HTTP 500, but I can go down into the individual calls and then look at every single trace, including timing, including code level, and including the error. So in my app, I'm just throwing an HTTP 500 in 50% of the use cases. But I think you get the idea of running the different tests and then also selecting the timeframes and then comparing it. Also here we see on the pure path the different metadata on every single transaction. We see LSN, LTN, TSN, right? So this is available everywhere in every diagnostics views. You can then filter and then also use it for comparison. Good. We ran a second test. We compared it. Okay, that's good. Next thing is, you know what I miss? Even though I have my charts kind of in my multi-dimensional analysis, I want to put them on a dashboard. And in order to do this, we can, in that same multi-dimensional analysis view that I showed you earlier, where we can do ad hoc analysis and then do the ad hoc diagnostics, we can use that same configuration screen where we then see that chart, right? We can select a metric, we can select an aggregation. I highlighted here that not all aggregations are yet supported for what I'm going to show you next, but most are. But I can say, give me the response time split by TSN and then create a metric for it. And creating a metric for it actually means it will create a metric that you can then put on a dashboard that you can access through the API that you can alert on. In our case, the most important thing is we want to put it on a dashboard. And we want, for automation purposes later on, also extracted through the API. This is also why we get an API key for every new metric. All right. So this is the easy way of doing it, right? Through that screen, then you click on create metric and that's it. Behind the scenes, if you click on advanced options, you actually get to the calculated service metric configuration screen, where you can say, I want to have a particular metric created that uses a base metric or a metric source like response time, and then it is splitting on a certain dimension, and I want to give it a particular name. Again, I want to show it to you for one example, and then I want to show it to you in, okay, let's do it from diagnostic tools again, because I think this is the easier way of doing it. So if I want to, for instance, have let's say, number of calls to other services. So how many calls are made from one service to another. I want to have it split by test step name. And as I said, I only want to have this for requests. Where is the request attribute? Where the test step name is actually present. So any value in this case. All right. Again, I see my overview, but now I can click on create metric. Of course, I need to also specify for what I wanna. So this is actually a very good point. Let me click this again. It says select the management zone, a topology or request attribute filter to limit the result. In this case, when we create a metric, we by default, it would create the metric for every single entity, and that's obviously too much. So we need to filter it on something like a tag on a service. So for instance, only your services in your test environment. So in this case, I also want to add a service tag, my app under test. Here we go, right? This also makes more sense because I don't want to calculate the same metric for many, many different services in Dynatrace that may not belong to you anyway. So now I can give it a metric name. This could be test step, what did I call it in my slides? Let me just quickly go back. Test requests by something. Test requests. Now, what did I call it in my script? I want to use the same name because I have a second script here. Test step service calls. Right. So test step service calls and create the metric, and that's it. Right, now I can create a custom chart and put it on it. I show you where this can also be found in the configuration, settings. And I know there's a lot of questions that are coming in. I will make sure that I will cover. We can also go over time later on. So under server-side metrics, calculated service metric, I had the top URLs. These are ones I had from earlier, but the test service call metric, this is the one I just created through the wizard. Test step service calls automatically generated a key for API usage. The condition, remember, only services that are tagged with a certain tag, for instance. I can also automatically see for how many services this metric will be calculated, and also the splitting. Now this is great, but what I want to show you now, I'm actually going to delete this one. And the reason why is because I don't want to create all of the other ones manually. I want to do it in an automated way. And this is where this script comes in. It's called the create test step calculated metrics. Create test step calculated metrics. And it tells me, hey, if you want to call this, you need to give me some filter options, right? That means I want to only create the rules for a particular service filter. So now I'm saying environment because my tag comes into an environment variable and it's app under test. So only create these metric definitions, these calculated service metrics, and configured in a way that it's just for these services. So here we go. It's creating all of them, running through. We get the output. And again, this is, if you do it the same way as great. If you have your other metrics, your other naming rules, also perfectly fine. What I want to show you is that you can fully automate the whole thing, right? There's nothing else. There's nothing manually we need to do anymore, except of obviously initially, defining what you want, but you can create this manually, automatically, sorry. So now I have test steps by HTTP status, test step CPU, DB calls, and so on and so forth. Now, what I can do is if I go back to my test, and I think the old test already finished, and if I run it again, from now on, not only am I able to do my multidimensional analysis ad hoc on data that I can do multidimensional splitting on, but I automatically get metrics, these metrics that are specified here, that I can put on a chart, that I can also specify alerts on. I saw that, Marin, you have been asking, can you also specify alerts? Yes, you can also define custom alerts on it if you want to be alerted on these metrics. And also a follow-up question that Marin, you had, what's the impact of using this on licenses? So there is, these are calculated service metrics. That means every of our users, you have a set of licenses that are part of a set of metrics that you can consume as part of your license agreement. But the more metrics you create here, obviously you need to figure out how many metrics you have. So these are our licensed metrics. The great thing about this is now we can go in and we can start creating custom charts, right? And we can go in last 30 minutes and can go in and I say test step requests by HTTP status, for instance. Right? And so data is coming in. Overall, I don't want to have it overall. I want to have it split by HTTP status class. So this was one of the metrics where I said, I want to have a metric that splits all the incoming requests that are test requests, meaning that have the HTTP header on it. And then I want to have it split by HTTP status code or class 200, 300, 400, 500. And then obviously I would like to have probably red here because this is bad and this is green, and because I don't know all the magic codes are on top of my head. I have this here and then a time series, a pie chart, whatever it is, right? And then we pin it to a dashboard. Let's create a new dashboard. And let's call this Perf Clinic dashboard. There you go. There you go. Anyway, Perf Clinic dashboard. Here's the name. Okay. First one is here. That's awesome. And then what I also always like is, let me just do clone, and then we changed it from pi to time series, and then now we're also going to get this over time. So that's it, right? So that's the first one. The next one, right, custom chart. Let me add another one. I know I'm probably running out of time to build the whole dashboard, but you get the idea. Let me just put in another one. Let's do the test step, let's say response time. There we go. And then I say I want to have a top list. And obviously I want to have it split by test step. Right? So invoke echo version, and then maybe you come up with a nice color scheme for individual tests. But this is basically my slowest test steps. This and update dashboard tile. And here we go. Right? And then you get the idea. One last one that I want to add is, let me add one more chart here. Let's do configure it. And because I think this is also obviously a nice uniqueness of Dynatrace, I could do the service calls, but let's do the test step CPU. So what's the most CPU consuming? Top list, right? And then over again, split by test step. And most CPU consuming test steps. Here we go, update. And voila, now let me zoom out here a little bit. And then obviously you can do these cool things of, hey, let's clone this, let's put this down here. And not only do I want to have the top list, but I also want to have a time series so I see it over, how it progresses over time, right? I mean, this is clone, duck, and change it to time series, right? So a lot of cool things you can do here, building these dashboards and adding obviously then host metrics, process metrics, whatever else you want. Okay, so let me quickly check back. Remember, this can also fully be automated. Demo, I did the demo, I created the calculate service metrics, I ran another test. Let's build some dashboards. I showed you already how you can start building these dashboards. Remember, the rest is just dashboarding. You just add stuff to the dashboard that is relevant for you. If you have the proper tags on your services and on your hosts, you can build one dashboard that you can also then repurpose easily for other projects, and then just use management zones for filters, so the same dashboard can be then used for different projects, for different test environments. Yeah, run another test, build a dashboard. Yeah, that's it. So what's next? This is, and I will have enough time for going through the questions. I just want to give an outlook on what I want to show in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I want to show you how we can take the dashboard we have built. And while these dashboards are great and they are helpful, obviously, the goal is to even automate the analysis and automate the comparison of tests. So I will show you how you can take a Dynatrace dashboard and take the metrics that are important for you, the SLIs, the service level indicators, define a so-called SLI YAML file, a service level indicator YAML file that specifies exactly the metrics you have on your dashboard. Then we also can specify an SLO file. This is the service level objectives. So what are typically the things you look out for? Either hard-coded thresholds, a certain metric should not go beyond a certain threshold, or maybe you always compare with the previous builds and you are looking out for any regression between builds. So we can define this in so-called SLI and SLO, and then instead of having to manually do this, right? If we have the SLI and SLO created out of our dashboards, then we can use Captain, and Captain is really seen as an automation layer on top of Dynatrace in this case, especially this capability of a quality gate. You can say, hey, Captain, you look at the data for me, you compare it for me, and you just tell me how my builds are doing, if it's good or no good. All right, before I open up for Q&A, the first link is the blog post that I based the whole performance clinic on. There's also another performance clinic, as I mentioned, coming on June 17th, where I show all of this, not only with Captain and Dynatrace, but also included in Jenkins. But if you don't have Jenkins and maybe some other CI/CD tool, then you can integrate it, obviously, with any other CI/CD tool. And if you already want to do some research on Captain, there's Captain-related material out there as well. There's tutorials and a YouTube channel. All right, so now I see there's a lot of questions, and hopefully sharing dashboards. I think, Daniel, I hopefully explained to share the dashboards. You can export that also through the API. So you can export it through the API. You can then import it again through the API. That's just the way I did it. When using the DT tags, can you do things like DT tags equals app name, DT version, and will it show up in the tag name? Yes. So the tagging is a very good question. So the question was Dynatrace blog, service tagging, DT tags. Is a great blog post from Michael Kopp. Let me just double check one of those where he explained DT tags. Exactly. So Donald, you can do this, right? You can do DT tags equals Mike stuff, and then also easy travel equals Mike. So you can do just values or also name values. That's DT tags. Another option to tag is by creating automated tagging rules where Dynatrace can extract metadata from existing metadata or metadata you pass to it, and then on the automatically convert it. In my blog post, where is it? In my tutorial, if you search for service tagging, I highlight all the different tagging options. Manual tagging is also an option, automated tagging with rules, extracting tags from your cloud infrastructure, and also environment tags. That's the way I did it. So hopefully, Donald, this answers your question. Are automated request attributes and auto config item potent? That means if I want to change configuration rerun, will it update delete configs based on changes, or will it fail create duplicates? The request attributes, they have a unique name. That means if you are through the API creating the same request attribute again, it will not touch it. So that's why it's not. I think it also says it actually in my. If you look at the create test request attributes, exactly. If these request attributes already exist, they won't be overwritten. Right? That's the way the API works to create request attributes. Alex, hopefully that answers your question. Can we find the automation script used in the demo on GitHub? Yes. Remember, this is the GitHub repo under Captain examples, simple node service Dynatrace. I'll send it to all here and all. Why do you put your customers through all of these configuration headaches when app1 worked out of the box? Plus the UI was a whole bunch better. Thank you for that awesome. Why did I read this out loud? Well, there is, first of all, I agree with you that some things are a little harder now, but let me remind you, the work that I'm doing here will obviously impact also the future product. And that means we have obviously intentions to make this all easier and automated and out of the box. But also be reminded that Dynatrace is not AppMon. AppMon covered a great use case, but Dynatrace is a lot more, and therefore we also have to think, and add more things into consideration. But Jim, your point taken. I think with the APIs I've shown you that you can automate a lot of these things already. And you can be rest assured that there is more automation coming, that some of these things will even be fully automated. Also, we have load testing partners like Neoload. They are doing this already. You just launch the test and they are creating all this for you on the fly. Next thing, in AppMon, I have the ability to export test runs to compare at a later time, say a test I'm going to run next release. Right now, there's no export test capability, right? There's no give me the full terabyte of pure paths. That's not there. And what we see with with our customers, including you're moving into more continuous performance environments, where comparing one release with a release from a year ago might still now be a use case, but I think these use cases are going away. It's about doing continuous performance, running smaller tests, fully automated through a pipeline, and then you want to do your quick metric comparison, as I showed you, and then you have PurePath data available for a while, depending on your retention policy, and then you can still, obviously compare PurePaths. But honestly, since I've moved over from AppMon to Dynatrace, I don't compare PurePaths anymore, right? I don't do this. I know I taught you all of this over the last couple of years, a lot of you in my YouTube videos, but I don't do this anymore. I go to a metrics-based approach, and in case then I see a regression on these architectural metrics, then I can do my hotspot analysis. And only in rare cases I go to the PurePath when it's really necessary. I agree with you with one thing. If you have applications that may only change once a year and you run every year a load test and you want to compare it, then you cannot compare with PurePath anymore, but you can still compare it on a metrics base. And that's also what we do with Captain, because with Captain, we extract all these metrics and we keep a history for as long as you want. And then you can still see how your test metrics, your key metrics have compared with the previous build, maybe from a year ago. Is there any solution in Dynatrace for tracking the SRE concept of error budget, the balance of time? Alex, I don't want to make too many predictions or announcements here, but yes, the concept of SRE and SLIs and SLOs and error budgets is something that we're actively working on. That's all I can say right now. Will the comparison be restricted to a 10 days window? The comparison will be restricted whatever retention policy you have in Dynatrace, depending on whether you run SaaS or managed and how long we hold the data, and also in which granularity, right? This is something we probably need to look into your particular environment. You use DT tag for environment. Can we use DT custom prop as well? Yes. Good point. I think I had it here somewhere. In my blog post. The DT custom props is a way how you can add metadata and then you can use an automated tagging rule to extract that metadata. It's actually one of my preferred ways of doing it with custom props and then tagging rules. But I just today, for simplicity, I just did the where is my thingy here, right? So that means what I could have done is I could have done a --env dt custom props. I think that's how it's proper props. dt custom props, dt custom. Now where is it? Come on. Custom props. dt custom. Why don't I find it? What's the right name? dt custom props. Dynatrace blog. We'll find this somewhere. dt custom prop. Yeah. So I could do something like this as well. dt custom prop equals, I don't know, my app equals, or let's say my environment equals testing, and then this will show up as metadata on the process, and then you can create a tagging rule that says extract my env, and then if it's testing, yeah. So this is a great way, dt custom prop, and then using custom automated tagging rules. Is there a way to use a request attribute for a performance comparison instead of using a time frame? Not right now, but this is also something we're working on, where we want to give you an overview of all of your tests. And if you put in the metadata of like, this is test number 1, test number 2, and you send us the events, then you can say, look at the data from this particular, from the request with this tag, and then compare it with the other ones. So George. Let's see, this has been answered. Is it possible with Dynatrace to monitor talent jobs? I believe I saw this question somewhere else, right? Dynatrace talent, I don't honestly, I guess this is your talent job, right? I don't know. I don't know what talent jobs are, to be honest with you. Dynatrace, what is talent jobs? I would Google, and if it's any technology that we support, whether it's Java, whatever the underlying technology is. I think the answer is whatever the underlying technology is. If it's Java.NET, PHP, Node, Go, if it runs in containers, that should all be fine. Can you generate a report out of the dashboard for a specific duration? So what you can, what the guys have already built in, you can subscribe to a dashboard, and then you can also enable reports. So that's a new capability. So where you can get, I'm not sure if PDF is right now, but there's a lot of things that are coming up where you can then, give people access to it, even without a Dynatrace account, or sending them emails. I think that's the thing you should look into. How much history can be retained? Metrics perspective, again, we hold history for forever. At some point we age data, so we don't keep it in the same granularity until the very end. Let's say we don't keep the same granularity for forever. So we have a data retention and data aging policy, and it's different between SaaS and managed, and it also depends on managed how much data storage you put in. So it depends on, again, your environment. That's true for metrics, and for pure paths, there's also, it's all documented how long we retain each individual transaction. Can Captain be used for non-Kubernetes services? Yes, it can. So Captain is just see that way. Captain is an orchestrator on top of the Dynatrace API to automate certain things. While we often promote Captain as a solution, obviously, for cloud native, because it has a lot of capabilities for deploying containers in Kubernetes. The quality gate capability, the testing capability works with any type of app. You can test a mainframe. You can get a quality gate of mainframe applications, because what Captain does, it automates use cases on top of the Dynatrace API. So Alex, yes, it's also possible for non. And you can also use Captain to deploy apps outside of Kubernetes as well. If you want to use Captain for deployment, you can trigger a Jenkins job. You can trigger any type of script that then does the deployment, for instance, for you. Can SLO breaches for production, not test traffic, be used to trigger problems in Dynatrace? Yes. Yes, you can. So this is just a classical alerting capability. You can take a metric, you can specify what your SLO is, and then you will get a problem. That problem can then trigger whatever we can trigger. A chat message, it can trigger a ServiceNow ticket, it can trigger anything, yeah. From a Docker command line. I think, Donald, this was a follow-up. Answer this. In multi-dimensional analysis, how can I filter by a non-existing attribute? I want to know if a request is failing to fill the attribute of a non-existing. That's a good question, Marcelo. You want to see only requests where a particular attribute is not available. I don't think this is possible right now, but that's a very good question. Let me take this down. Filter on non-existing request attributes. Marcelo, I don't think it's possible right now, but I'll ask the team. Is there an easy way to drill down to the pure path information from a custom chart or from the dashboard? Yes, there is, I think, right? If I click on this here, I get my chart. And then if it depends on the metric, obviously, but then if I, there we go, it was obviously a perfect example from the multidimensional, I think you said, from the custom chart. Let's see, custom chart, I think you end up on the service view, whoever kind of created, so let's say test step invoke, right? And then you are on the service. Yeah, it's not, it's a good point. From here, there's a couple of clicks to get to the pure path. My question would be, why do you want to get to the pure path right away? What's the real use case? Don't you want to have probably some response time analysis first? What you can do and what I've done in other dashboards is I have, and I think this would be the answer to your question. You can craft the link to the pure path view with the filters, and then let's see if it's in this one here. And then you can link it, right? So I can just link, like here, I did the pure paths. So click on it, and then you get to the particular view. Because the dashboard gives you the ability, these are just, what are they called again, markdown tiles. So in the markdown tile, you can just craft your link to a particular dashboard or view, and that allows you to also then link directly to pure path and then focus it on that particular service that you're interested in. The recorded version of the webinar is all going to be on YouTube and Dynatrace University. Can you export metrics via the API for long-term retention? Again, the metrics are kept for long-term retention. We have it long-term. At some point, we age it. But yes, you can also access the metrics via the metrics API. How would somebody? I want to take two more questions. I think that I have. How would you approach building SLIs, SLOs on Dynatrace straight on the product in production environment? I can see that you're recording this webinar. Would you be able to share the link? Yeah. Again, the recording, all of my YouTube video, all of my tutorials are going to be on the Dynatrace YouTube channel, also on Dynatrace University. In terms of SLIs and SLOs from production, yes, this is something we're working on, where the idea is you're looking at a production environment, and based on what we know from production, for instance, which metrics are flaky and causing problems, which metrics have which particular kind of behavior over normal time, we can create SLIs and SLOs for your pre-prod environment, right? So that's something we already have in mind, Vadim. Can you export the session, Jim? I think we talked about this. No, not the way you did it in Appmon. Will the PowerPoint be shared? The PowerPoint will be uploaded to Dynatrace University. So for all of our users, you can go to university.dynatrace.com. You can log in, and under the on-demand Dynatrace content, this is where you find also the webinars, the video, and then the PowerPoints will also be uploaded. Exactly. All right, so these are all the Dynatrace webinars. So these are all of my my performance clinics, and next to those, you also have the PowerPoints, right? If you click on it, then you also get the presentation. All right. Last question that I'm taking, and I know we are already, it's great that so many people stayed on, so that's very much appreciated. Does the metric have information from his creation or contain information from the past? I'm not exactly sure. The metric itself, a metric has a metric ID, and you can query the time frame. You can query the values from any type of time frame. And you can also say, give me the metric for particular entities. So Gregory, you may want to look into the Dynatrace metrics API. So this is where you can get the overview of how you can read data points. So you get all the data. It's really powerful API, and I will actually have the product manager for the APIs on a performance clinic in July. Yeah, so that's going to be good. Let's see, George, to answer your question why I would want to drill into the purepaths, I have a request attribute that captures the .NET method argument. I can split based on this argument dimension. If I see a spike or degradation in the performance, the purepath is the most useful. Yeah, George, I agree. And if you have, if you can do this from the chart, I agree with you. This is strange that it doesn't work from the chart, but from your diagnostics view, right, from your multidimensional analysis view, you can. So this is something I will also give back to the team from a custom chart. I want to be able not lose the context, but from here, right? Let's say this is your request attribute from your .NET method. Click on PurePath. See that? So this could be your request attribute. You see your spike. You go into that time frame, right, where it actually spiked, and then you say, hey, now I want to have the PurePaths. And then you're there. So hopefully this, George, from the multidimensional it works. I will figure out, I will take a note, link from custom chart from a calculated service metric to diagnostic views such as PPAPs. All right. So this is now really going to be kind of my last thing I want to tell you. First of all, thank you so much for being with me. Final slide I always use. There's a lot of more content out there, and hopefully you enjoyed this webinar. Hopefully you got value out of it. Thanks for the great feedback. Thanks for the great questions. Thanks also for challenging us. Yes, we know we can always do better, and yes, we will do better. But I think we are showing that with the APIs and with the automation, we can already do a lot of things. You just keep challenging us so that we make it even better in the future. With that, I hope to see most of you in about 2 weeks at the next performance clinic or whatever other virtual venue. We'll see each other again, okay? Hopefully also soon at some point in the real world. Okay, thank you so much and bye-bye.